Back with us now on the Sunrise Morning Show is Stephen Howard from In Defense of Christians. Stephen, welcome back.
Good morning, Andy. Good to be with you.
It is very good to have you. Can you start off giving us the details of what happened in this Palm Sunday attack on a cathedral in Indonesia?
Sure. So two terrorists went into the Sacred Heart of Jesus Cathedral in Makassar, Indonesia, this past Sunday on Palm Sunday around 10:30 in the morning, just as Mass was letting out, detonated an explosive. We know that thus far 20 people are injured and no one has been killed. And there's also intelligence suggesting that the attackers were part of a group called Jemaah Anshorat Daulah, which is a local Indonesian affiliate of the Islamic State. And so it looks as if both bombers were actually possibly married. It was a man and a woman, both in their early 20s. But this is really, these attacks are really complementary to a series of concerns of Islamic State activity, not only in Indonesia, but in the region in general. One of them in particular one of the attackers, that is, has had connections with some attacks that had taken place in the Philippines. So that is what we know right now.
Now, Indonesia is a Muslim-majority country. What is the country's track record when it comes to the treatment of minority Christians there?
Certainly. It's on Open Doors World Watch List, it's ranked 47th. With that being said, this is the largest Muslim country in the world. It's very large, and obviously there's many different cultures, ethnic groups in Indonesia. In fact, the reality is, in many instances, Indonesia has been pointed to in many ways as an example of tolerance and a model of coexistence that's considered a success. Now, obviously, in the modern world with the challenges that we are facing, especially with groups like ISIS that have a global footprint and who inspire and radicalize people in every country, the challenges that we're facing are new. But there is precedent, definitely, in Indonesian culture for peaceful coexistence. But they have had genuine issues with religious freedom. There's no question. Even probably about 5 or 6 years ago, as I recall, I believe the Christian mayor of Jakarta, there was a warrant issued for his arrest because he had merely made some public statement that was reflective of the Christian religion. So it's not to say there aren't problems. There's definitely issues with religious freedom, but there's also precedent for tolerance. So what happened was horrific, and they're going to have to ask some difficult questions and learn to recover from it and respond accordingly.
Is Islamic terrorism a major concern in Indonesia?
It has been. It's not as much as in some other countries in the world.
Sure.
But the most kind of horrific attack had taken place in early 2002 on the island of Bali, where 202 people, mostly foreign tourists, were killed. And so this is definitely a threat that's going to have to be looked at. It's just, the reality is just a very populated country. And so it's not hard for, a group like ISIS or anyone else looking for followers to go to a place like Indonesia and find, a few troubled souls, as it were, who would want to, commit such horrific acts. So if anything, I think that more than reflecting on the problem in Indonesia, specifically, I think what attacks like this really show is that it's very important why we continue to engage, especially when we look at the work IDC does in the Middle East, because in the Middle East, what we are seeing is that ISIS is actually regaining ground and territory. Especially in Syria, we see a resurgence of ISIS. And so what we see is when we fail to confront these groups, or when we fail to have a strong strategy against them in the region where they're born, they can begin to disperse, to diffuse, and to commit terrorist actions across the globe. This complements very well, obviously, with what we've covered on your show before in Nigeria, what we see in northern Nigeria possibly being the most dangerous place on earth because of an ISIS offshoot. You might remember About 2 years ago, we had the Sri Lanka Easter bombing. So what we're seeing is that this group that originated out of the Middle East is expanding globally. And so I think that what these attacks show is that there remains a need very strongly for a global counterterrorism strategy. And what we see is in Iraq and Syria, while ISIS committed genocide against Christians there, that genocidal mentality is carried along with the group all over the world. That's why they're committing a genocide against Christians in Nigeria. That's why they beheaded the 21 Coptic martyrs on a beach in Libya. That's why we can look at whether it be Sri Lanka, whether it be Indonesia, the Philippines. That's why we're seeing in other regions of the world that their affiliates are uniquely targeting Christians.
And with that in mind, are you uniquely concerned about this Holy Week? I mean, you mentioned the Easter Sunday bombings, and, you know, they still continue, they say, to investigate that and haven't gotten any answers on that front. I mean, and it seems like Christians can be targeted more precisely during these big religious holidays.
Unfortunately, oftentimes, especially Holy Week, is when we expect there to be terrorist attacks against Christians. And one of the more depressing parts about the work that we do is that on Palm Sunday, on Easter, our whole staff and our whole team is online monitoring the news throughout the day because it's become an expectation that there will be some attack somewhere. And over the years, I mean, obviously Sri Lanka was tragic. What happened to Coptic Christians in Egypt a few years back on Palm Sunday, but we see in Indonesia. For many years consecutively, Pakistan would witness unique targeting of Christians, and so it's something that we expect, and that's just reflective of the sad state of affairs in which we find ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, please know of our appreciation for In Defense of Christians in staying on top of it all and speaking out about this need for a global strategy when it comes to protecting Christians around the world. We've been talking to Stephen Howard from In Defense of Christians, which is linked at sunrisemorningshow.com. Stephen, thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Annie, and I would just invite your listeners, to take proactive action to help support persecuted Christians on our website. We have a Take Action tab with a bunch of action alerts that people can use.
indefenseofchristians.org. Go there and go often. Stephen, a blessed Holy Week to you.
Thank you very much, Annie. God bless you too.